4 must-read authors and where to start. I say must-read, tongue-in-cheek, as I don't subscribe to the idea that anything really must be read. Also, while I've limited this to 4 authors today, these aren't the only 4 or even my top 4. I just as easily could have included Banks, Lem, Asimov, Stevenson, Butler, Stapleton, Dick, and others. This will not be an exhaustive biography of the authors or a full list of their work, just an introduction and a few ideas where to start. First up is Greg Egan. Greg Egan's work is not to be missed hard science fiction. Egan's work, because it can be very math and physics heavy, it's not going to be the most accessible sci-fi, but it does have the potential to be some of the most rewarding literature you'll read. Egan is a mathematician, a computer programmer, and of course a writer of hard science fiction. For me, Egan is the modern equivalent of what I gained from Asimov in terms of big ideas, imagined worlds, and futures. Not since Asimov have I felt my mind expanded to so many possibilities that might exist in the universe or the evolution of consciousness. There are a few entry points that I suggest for starting Egan. The most obvious are his short fiction books, Oceanic and Axiomatic, as these are the lowest time investment way to investigate his writing style. I lean towards Oceanic as it features a number of short stories, including the phenomenal short Riding the Crocodile that land in the same universe as his brilliant novel, Incandescence. Following Oceanic, if you're feeling confident, head right into Incandescence. The novel features 2 storylines, one set on a rock caught in the accretion disk of a black hole. Living in the tunnels of the rock are unique and pre-industrial aliens just learning to understand their situation and the physics of their world. The second storyline is set far future with beings who can travel as data and download themselves into avatar bodies. Incandescence is a display of Egan's huge imagination of our future galaxy, evolution of humanity, and tons of geometry and physics. If you prefer starting with a novel, I'd suggest either Permutation City or Diaspora. Both of these novels evoke deep thoughts about human consciousness, technology, and human evolution. Whereas Permutation City is going to be the most story-driven with slightly fewer hard science obstacles, Diaspora is a literary achievement on par with the greatest science fiction novels of all time. Diaspora imagines human consciousness as software, venturing out from the Earth across the stars and in search of sentient alien life. Egan sets the table, introducing a new data-based consciousness citizen from its gestation, birth, and development to sentience in great detail. By the time you finish or pause from considering all of the implications of these developments, new contemplations arise around individuals cloning themselves and going separate ways to explore and maybe merging again in the future, or simply going their separate ways. Diaspora has everything: technology, alien life, space exploration, wormhole physics, robots, apocalyptic events, and asks deep philosophical questions about the nature of consciousness. If you get along well with Diaspora and Permutation City and you have some Egan work under your belt, that's when I'd move on to more challenging reads like Dichronauts, Schild's Ladder, and Quarantine, all 3 of which are mind-blowing. Ursula LeGuin is an author of science fiction and fantasy literature, best known for her fantasy novel, A Wizard of Earthsea, and her science fiction novels, The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed. Because her work transcends the boundaries of traditional science fiction, her novels are often labeled literary sci-fi, and The Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness are probably the best examples of that. Both novels exist in Le Guin's Hainish cycle. These loosely connected stories exist in the same universe and can be read in any order. The Left Hand of Darkness is a great place to start because it represents all of the great elements of Le Guin's writing. There is adventure, complex character relationships between 2 beings very different from one another, elevated language and prose, the right dose of politics, and philosophical science fiction considerations. In Left Hand, Genly I is an envoy representing a sort of confederacy of inhabited worlds and has arrived on the planet Gethin, which is also known as Winter. Political conflict surrounding Genly's visit results in Genly and a disgraced politician, Therum Estraven, fighting for survival as they traverse the inhospitably icy terrain of Gethin. In The Dispossessed, Le Guin introduces the worlds of Anaris and Eurus. Eurus is the more lavish and tech-advanced of the 2 worlds. The Eurus economy and society have a very capitalistic feel. Anaris is a moon colony. Generations ago, rebels and revolutionaries from Eurus were granted the moon as a refuge to evacuate from Eurus and set up their own society. The Anaran idea of utopia is a communalist society that shuns materialism and proprietarianism in favor of living and working for the good of the community. Main character Shevek, a brilliant physicist, unappreciated, uncelebrated, stifled on Anares, will do the unthinkable, the reviled. He will travel to Eurus. This fish out of water will see how the other half lives, maybe complete his revolutionary work in temporal physics, maybe get published where the work can be useful and appreciated. It can't really be that simple though, can it? Start with either of these novels and then work your way through the rest of the Heinous cycle, perhaps with The Word for World is Forest next. If you prefer to start LeGuin with shorter reads, try the novella The Lathe of Heaven, or the short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. In Lathe of Heaven, an individual whose dreams can and do alter reality is manipulated and used by nefarious others to remake the world the way they wish it to be, with dire and not as predicted consequences. In Omelas, the initial setting is a utopian city. The city benefits and prospers, and the only cost is the suffering and abuse of one individual. A child. Ray Bradbury was a visionary, a poet, a playwright, an author, a storyteller. Bradbury wrote more than 400 science fiction and fantasy short stories and is best known for his novels Farenheit 451, The Martian Chronicles, and Something Wicked This Way Comes. Bradbury's prose is not just beautiful and imaginative, it never fails at making me feel. Something Wicked This Way Comes is a fantastical novel set around a traveling dark and mysterious carnival and the shady characters who run it. The heart of the story is the relationship, coming of age, love, suffering, and destroyed innocence of the two main characters, 13-year-old boys Jim and Will. Bradbury's flowery prose will open the coldest heart and make you feel for these two very different boys. One is a wild child who suffers deep inside, not revealing the sadness over the death of his father that consumes him. The other, his perfect complement, is careful and restrained. Something Wicked is a beautiful story about the love between two friends. The strength of the prose that speaks volumes in the simplest of statements is evident in this example. So there they go. Jim running slower to stay with Will. Will running faster to stay with Jim. Jim breaking 2 windows in a haunted house because Will's along. Will breaking 1 window instead of none because Jim's watching. God, how we get our fingers in each other's clay. That's friendship, each playing the potter to see what shape we can make of the other. If you are more in the mood for a more adult and dystopian tale, I'll point you to the classic Farenheit 451. In this future world, books are banned. If you own books, they will be burned, your house will be burned, and you might even be killed. In Bradbury's Crosshairs is a society that values consumption, conformity, and blissful ignorance, and stifles the pursuit of knowledge. Tell me what Bradbury makes you feel when you hear this passage about burning books. Sit down, Montague. Watch, delicately, like the petals of a flower. Light the first page. Light the second page. Each becomes a black butterfly. Beautiful, eh? Light the third page from the second, and so on, chain-smoking chapter by chapter. All the silly things the words mean, all the false promises, all the second-hand notions and time-worn philosophies. There sat Beatty perspiring gently, the floor littered with swarms of black moths that had died in a single storm. As amazing as these books are, my picks for Bradbury books to start with will have to be The Martian Chronicles and The Illustrated Man. Both of these novels are fix-ups of short stories, and really, take your pick. Both feature imaginative, fantastical, and science fiction short stories set on Mars and elsewhere. I think the work that's most likely to grab you and not let go are the first few stories of The Martian Chronicles. The Earth is sending rockets to the moon, and first contact and colonization are just a heartbeat away. In one particularly memorable story, humans have landed on Mars and are surprised to not find a welcoming party. They instead are left to go knocking on doors and announce their arrival and share in the excitement of first contact with Martians. Unfortunately for their high hopes, the Martians do not care to be bothered. They have chores to do, they have to do the laundry, they gotta cook dinner, all of those types of things. The Martian Chronicles gives healthy doses of satire and comedy, Martian world building, Martian evolution, and deep philosophical considerations about colonialism, first contact, and humanity. Finally, for today, Samuel R. Delany, overlooked as one of the great writers of dystopian post-apocalyptic fiction, an early originator or inventor of the cyberpunk genre, and one of the most imaginative writers of fantastical and philosophical space opera. Chip Delany is as must-read as it gets. Delany is accurately self-described a sex radical Afrofuturist and grandmaster of science fiction. Delany's work defies convention, and picking just one place to start a read of his celebrated fiction catalog is not easy. My three favorite novels are Empire Star, Dhalgren, and Babel 17. So let's start there. For the advanced reader who does not mind a challenge, go ahead and get blown away by Dhalgren, a chunker at nearly 800 pages. The story follows the exploits of the kid as he wanders, deciphers, experiences his existence, and the mystery of the fictional Midwest city Bologna. Following a mega catastrophe, Bologna is cut off from the rest of the world. Kid witnesses strange things in this strange world and seeks to figure out who he is, what is really happening, and what has really happened. A much shorter entry into Delany is his novella Empire Star. I like to refer to this as the Ballad of Comet Joe. Joe is a simplex or simple-minded being who encounters an alien with a plea that he deliver a message to Empire Star. Neither Joe nor the reader knows what the message is. Joe leaves his home planet Reese and luckily meets some quirky characters along the way who expand his mind, educate him in the ways of the galactic society, and teach him to think in a multiplex way. Joe's journey through time and space is narrated by his travel companion, Jewel, a crystallized life form. One thing that Empire Star has in common with Dhalgren is a circular text of sorts, as the story folds into itself and you can't be certain what part of the story is the real beginning. Also profound in Empire Star are the efforts taken to free the from their slavery and their crippling sadness. The Empire justifies the slavery as a galactic need, but Joe and company have, or will have, other ideas. If you've heard of Delany's knack for fantastical characters and situations, I'll point you to Babel 17. Babel 17, using the backdrop of an interstellar war, examines how language can be used as a weapon. The protagonist of the story, Ryder Wong, is a linguist set on a mission to decipher an enemy code. Wong is Asian, female, a poet, and maybe a telepath. Though a great protagonist, she's not even close to being one of the more fantastical characters. While I didn't include it among my top 3 Delany novels, if you enjoy cyberpunk and are curious about the origins of this subgenre, take a look at Nova. Nova features some memorable characters, a generations-long galaxy-wide rivalry between elite families, and technology that includes plugging yourself into computers, machines, and even starships to operate them. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read.